The leaves were floating in the air, as if trying to whisper an untold story. New York's Central Park, with its greenery and serenity, was as beautiful as ever, but this time there was a slight chill in the air that pierced the heart. The golden and red leaves of the trees were scattering on the ground, and from somewhere far off, the sound of children's laughter and the rustling of leaves echoed. Amidst all this, an old wooden bench, slightly worn by the passage of time, stood quietly in a corner of the park. This was no ordinary bench. It was a place where memories lived, where pain and hope embraced each other. Alan Thompson, a 55-year-old retired postman, came to that bench every morning. His face was etched with the lines of time, but his eyes held a sadness that transcended age. Every morning he brought a cup of coffee and an old book, though the pages of the book were rarely turned. His mind was elsewhere, lost in memories tied to that bench. It was the same place where he and his wife, Julia, used to sit for hours. Julia's laughter, her words, the walks through Central Park holding her hand. These were now just faded images locked in Alan's heart. 3 years ago, cancer had taken Julia away from him. That one illness had drained all the colors from Alan's life. He had no family, no children, no connection left to tether him to this world. Only this bench remained, bringing him closer to Julia. Every morning he sat on that bench, took a sip of his coffee, and sank into silence. People came and went. Some jogged by, some walked their dogs, some young couples laughed and chatted. But for Alan, it was all a blurry scene. His world had shrunk to that bench. He often thought this was his punishment, living in loneliness, reliving memories that would never return. Yet he came every morning, perhaps because sitting on that bench made him feel Julia's presence, perhaps because it was his last shred of hope. One morning, as the sun's rays filtered through the leaves and scattered on the ground, Alan walked toward the bench. But something was different today. The bench wasn't empty. A young girl sat there, her head bowed, her face buried in her knees. Her shoulders trembled slightly, as if she were crying silently. Alan hesitated. This was his place, his sanctuary. But seeing the pain on her face, he stopped. He took a deep breath, gripped his coffee cup a little tighter, and softly said, "Everything okay, miss?" The girl flinched. She quickly wiped her tears and looked up. Her eyes were red, her face weary, but there was a strange innocence in her expression. She looked about 25. Her hair was tied in a messy bun, and she wore a simple sweater that didn't seem to fully shield her from the cold. Yeah, I'm fine," she stammered, but her voice betrayed her hesitation. Alan looked into her eyes. He knew that "I'm fine" wasn't true. Without saying much, he asked for permission to sit at one end of the bench and settle down. "I come here every morning," he said, as if speaking to an old friend. "This bench, it's my spot, but today you're here, so maybe today it's yours." The girl tried to smile, but it was a half-hearted attempt. I'm just a little lost," she said. "I don't know what I'm doing here." Alan took a sip of his coffee and said gently, "Sometimes in life, it feels like we're lost. But you know, sometimes getting lost leads us to the right path." There was a warmth in his voice, as if he were talking to someone close. The girl looked at him. "How do you know?" Alan gave a small chuckle. "Because I'm lost too. And maybe for the last 3 years, I've been searching for a path that leads somewhere." That morning on that bench, two strangers began to talk. The girl's name was Lena. She had come to New York from California, chasing her dreams. But this city, known as the City of Dreams, had become a harsh reality for her. She shared that she was a graphic designer but couldn't find a job. Her boyfriend, with whom she had moved to New York, had betrayed her. Their relationship had fallen apart, and now she was alone, exhausted and ready to give up. "I feel like I've lost everything," she said softly. her eyes welling up again. Alan looked at her quietly. Her words echoed his own life. "You think you've lost everything," he said, "but maybe this is the moment when life is about to give you something new." Lena looked at him, as if trying to understand how this stranger's words carried such depth. That day they sat for hours. Alan told her about his life, about Julia, their love, and the emptiness that had taken over after she was gone. Lena, too, opened up. She spoke about how she had drifted away from her parents, how she had left everything behind for her dreams, and how she now felt it was all a mistake. After that day, Lena began coming to the bench every morning. It wasn't a planned meeting, but it was as if they needed each other. Alan shared stories from the old days, his time as a postman, delivering letters through the streets of New York. He told her how people used to wait eagerly for letters, how a single letter could bring a smile to someone's face. Lena told him about today's world, the dazzle of social media, the magic of technology, all of which was new to Alan. Slowly, a unique bond formed between them. It wasn't the bond of a father and daughter, nor just friendship, but something special. One day when the air was particularly chilly, Lena asked, "Don't you ever feel like you left something unfinished? Something that could have changed your life?" Alan took a long breath. "Yes," he said. "Julia and we hoped for a child, a daughter, but she passed away right after birth. Something went wrong at the hospital. They said she was stillborn." His voice grew heavy. "Maybe I was never meant to be a father." Lena looked into his eyes. In that moment, she felt his pain. She gently held his hand and said, "You would have been a great father." Alan smiled faintly, his eyes moist. "Maybe," he said, "but it's all in the past now." After that day, their conversations grew deeper. Lena began including him in Julia's memories. She asked what Julia liked, how she laughed, how she sang. And Alan, who hadn't shared his stories with anyone in years, began to open up. He saw a strange maternal warmth in Lena, as if she were his own daughter. Time passed. Lena slowly started standing on her own feet. She began taking freelance projects. She still came to the bench, but the sadness on her face was fading. Alan was her biggest supporter. He told her, "You have the same fire in you that Julia had. Don't give up, Lena." One day, Lena excitedly shared that she had started freelancing for an ancestry website. "They do DNA tests, and I'm designing some marketing materials for them," she said. "The funny thing is, they offered me a free DNA test, and I got it done just for fun." Alan laughed and said, "So now you'll find out where your roots are?" Lena chuckled. "Yeah, maybe I'll turn out to be a princess." A few weeks later, Lena came to the bench one morning, but her face was different. She was quiet, lost in thought. Alan asked, "What's wrong, Lena? Everything okay?" Lena took a deep breath and pulled a piece of paper from her pocket. "Alan, I got the DNA test results," she said softly. "And there's something in it I don't understand." Alan frowned. "What do you mean?" Lena handed him the paper. "It says I have a close relative, someone named Alan Thompson." Alan's heart raced. He looked at the paper carefully, his name, his birth date, and a phrase that would change his life forever. Possible immediate family. "What? What is this?" he stammered. Lena's eyes filled with tears. "I talked to my mom. At first, she didn't say anything, but then she told me that when I was born, there was some mix-up at the hospital. They told her I had died, but in reality, I was given to someone else." Alan's head spun. His breathing quickened. You're my daughter?" His voice trembled. Lena nodded slowly. "I think, yes." In that moment, on that bench, time seemed to stop. Alan hugged Lena tightly, and they both broke down in tears. If Julia were here today, Alan said, his voice choked, she'd only want you to be happy, my child. Lena called him Dad for the first time, and that one word filled Alan's life with colors again. Life changed after that. Lena and Alan started living together. Lena launched her graphic design startup, and Alan was her biggest cheerleader. Every evening they sat on that bench, laughing and talking. The bench, once a symbol of loneliness, now echoed with their laughter and love. Life had taken so much from Alan, but it had also returned everything he had lost. And on that old bench, amidst Central Park's golden leaves, a new story began, a story of love, hope, and family.